And the last part of the story for the tale of Mrs. Twiggy Winkle. And she hung up all sorts of sizes of clothes, small brown coats of mice, and one velvety black moleskin waistcoat, and a red tailcoat with no tail belonging to Squirrel Nutkin, and a very much shrunk blue jacket belonging to Peter Rabbit. You'll hear more about him later. And a petticoat, not marked, that had gone lost in the washing. And at last the basket was empty. Then Mrs. Twiggy Winkle made tea, a cup for herself and a cup for Lucy. They sat before the fire on a bench and looked sideways at one another. Mrs. Twiggy Winkle's hand holding the teacup was very, very brown, and her very, very wrinkly fingers with the soap suds, and all through her gown and her cap were hairpins sticking wrong end out, so that Lucy didn't like to sit too near her. This is the next picture. When they had finished tea, they tied up the clothes in bundles, and Lucy's pocket handkerchiefs were folded up inside her clean pinny, like her overdress, and fastened with silver safety pins. And then they made up the fire with turf and came out and locked the door and hid the key under the door sill. There she's doing that. Then away down the hill trotted Lucy and Mrs. Twiggy Winkle with the bundles of clothes. All the way down the path, little animals came out of the fern to meet them. The very first that they met was Peter Rabbit and Benjamin Bunny. And she gave them their nice clean clothes, and all the little animals and birds were so very much obliged to Mrs. Twiggy Winkle. And of course they looked after her too, with payment. So that at the bottom of the hill, when they came to the stile, there was nothing left to carry except Lucy's one little bundle. There they are there. Lucy scrambled up the stile with the bundle in her hand. "Good night, and thank you very, very much." But she hadn't even waited, Mrs. Twiggy Winkle hadn't, for either thanks or for the washing bill. She was running up the hill, and where was her white frilled cap, and her shawl, and her gown, and her petticoat? And how small she had grown, and how brown, and covered with prickles. Mrs. Twiggy Winkle was a hedgehog. She had taken off her clothes and gone back to who she really was. Now, some people say that little Lucy had been asleep upon the stile, but then how could she have found 3 clean pocket handkerchiefs and a penny pinned with a silver safety pin? And besides, I have seen that door into the back of the hill called Cat Bells, and besides, I am very well acquainted with dear Mrs. Twiggy Winkle. And that, my dear Matilda, is the tale of Mrs. Twiggy Winkle. Love you. Bye-bye for now.